So, let me get one thing out of the way immediately. Birds of Prey had some problems, and quite a few in fact. It was oddly paced, some of the dialogue was cringeworthy, the R rating felt forced, and it was extremely predictable at times. But it also just oozed style, and the amount of passion and care put in the movie is extremely apparent. And it's just so much fun to watch that all of those issues I mentioned didn't bother me at all. Even so, I think I'd be dumb not to at least acknowledge the movie's flaws and explain the problems, because no filmmaker can improve without some constructive criticism. So let's jump into what I didn't love, before we go over the numerous things that made me fall in love with this movie. First of all, the movie is really predictable. I mean, there were times that I actually knew the exact line that was about to be said, or I knew exactly what was about to happen next. The moment I remember most specifically was when Cassandra Cain was on her pickpocketing spree and she tried to pickpocket Dinah Lance. Dinah tells her that someday she's gonna pick the wrong pocket, and then seconds later she steals the diamond that holds the Bertinelli family fortune, and makes herself the target of one Roman Sionis and crew. This is an issue, because if the story was told linearly, this wouldn't have been a problem, but the story is told non-linearly, and we already knew that Cassandra had the diamond. So was there really a need for the foreshadowing? We all knew it was coming. Now, maybe that point was a bit petty, but most of my complaints are, so take them with a grain of salt. Next, I just wanted to talk about bad characterization, specifically with Renee Montoya. Renee was by far my least favorite character in this whole film, mainly because she was the weakest link. Harley was such a loony that any scene with her in it was just so much fun. Huntress was underdeveloped, but even so, she really stood out because she felt human. More on that later. Cassandra was a little but her relationship with Harley was so great, and Dinah Lance was just a badass and awesome. Now, what was Renee? A bad cop. That's it. Now, I know the whole movie tries to say that Renee is a great cop and she's constantly slighted by her partner and whatnot, but let's look at everything she does. First, she lets Harley get away multiple times. I mean, in one scene she had a gun pointed at Harley and she knows that Joker and Harley are broken up, so she has no reason not to shoot a convicted criminal with multiple charges of murder under her belt. But for some reason, Renee doesn't shoot when Harley starts running. Renee isn't only bad at catching criminals though, she's also a bad detective. Maybe she's good at figuring out how people were killed and in what order, but she can't get motives right at all. For 2/3 of the movie, she thinks that Huntress works for Roman, even though Huntress is killing people that Renee knows work for Roman. And we know she knows this because later we learn from Renee that Roman was the one who ordered the murder of the Bertinelli family. Now again, this isn't a big problem, but I just felt like why even include Renee? She adds nothing to the story other than taking away focus from characters that I actually liked. My final big complaint was that the R rating felt forced. Or maybe it seems more fitting to say that the R rating felt like they took too much advantage of it. I'm sorry to say, but normal people don't use in every other sentence. I mean, I do, but I'm an abnormality. Anyway, there's really no reason that every other line needed I'm not saying that the movie should be PG-13 because, let's be honest, the movie wouldn't be as good if Roman's freakouts were PG-13. Again, more on that later. There was also just the problem of cringy dialogue. Like, there were just some lines that made me want to curl up and die, specifically most things that Renee said, and I know she was supposed to sound like an 80s cop, but to me that felt like a detail added in the script after realizing, oh, we wrote really cringy dialogue for Renee, maybe we could make a joke about it and move on. To me, that's just not an excuse for bad writing. It's one thing if she occasionally made a reference because it's an established part of her character, but it's every line of dialogue from her and it's just annoying. Alright, I'm sure you've heard enough of my nitpicking, so let's get into what I liked about this movie. First of all, the movie was so obviously a director's vision. In comparison to current Marvel movies that just feel soulless and like they were shit out for money, Birds of Prey felt like a passion project. You could just tell how much everyone on set cared about being part of the movie and making it the best they possibly could. Cathy Yan obviously had a vision, and I'm so glad that Warner Bros. Has learned to stop tampering with the director's vision, because tampering with director's visions results in awful, awful things. Looking at you, Justice League. Now, to elaborate on the stylization I was talking about before, the best comparison I have for this movie is Guardians of the Galaxy, and even then, this movie is just so unique and colorful. It looks how Suicide Squad should have looked. It's colorful and bright, and there's so much going on at any time in every scene, but they manage not to make it feel cluttered. The colors are also just spectacular. The movie basically opens with this huge explosion of a factory of chemicals that turn Harley into, well, Harley. Not only is it awesome, because Harley just turns and walks away from this explosion in slow motion, but because the explosion is a combination of green and orange, and it's just not your generic fiery explosion. It's colorful and beautifully shot. Speaking of shot, this movie has some of the best filmed, edited, and choreographed fight scenes in any superhero movie ever. Every single fight is different, even parts of the same fight are different. Like in the big final battle, Harley got on rollerblades at some point while they were in the funhouse, and then, as they're leaving, it turns into a shootout where Renee almost dies. And I know I said almost, I was disappointed too. Then the fight turns into a chase sequence, except this time, Harley is being dragged along by Huntress on her motorcycle, while Harley is still on her roller skates. Then the battle ends with Cassandra planting a grenade on Roman and blowing him up. Another fight that was awesome was when Harley is raiding the police station. She has this Joker confetti shotgun thing, and every time she shoots, different colors also shoot out of the gun. There's this really beautiful scene where Harley walks in slow motion out of the pink and blue clouds of smoke as she continues to beat the crap out of the police. It was awesome. Now we should probably talk about the man who stole every single scene he appeared in, Black Mask, Roman Sionis himself. Ewan McGregor is the best casting for a superhero villain ever. And I mean that. I loved every scene that he was in, and every time you get to see him in this movie, it just gets a million times better. Not only is he a really threatening villain, but I think that Ewan really made this character his own. Not only is Roman great because of Ewan, however he does a huge part to make Roman the character that he turns out as, but the writing and characterization of Roman was amazing. I love the scene where Roman gets really upset at the loss of his diamond, and he gets self-conscious. He feels like a totally innocent girl is laughing at him. And to make himself feel better, he has her get up on a table and dance while her boyfriend rips her dress off in front of everyone. The writers did a really good job of giving life to Roman Sionis. I also have to say, this is the best gay character from a superhero movie ever, because it's not shoved in your face. In fact, it's never actually stated in the movie that Roman is gay. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of hints towards it, but honestly, while watching the movie, I thought Victor was the gay one. Then I read some interviews and was like, wait, Roman was kind of gay in this movie. But I just like that it wasn't so shoved in your face like other characters' sexualities. Speaking of subtlety, this movie is probably the best feminist movie ever. I mean, you can totally tell that it's supposed to be a woman's anthem type movie. I would know, I watched it with 5 other girls who were cheering by the end. I just like that it didn't feel like a bunch of old white guys in a room thinking about what would appeal to a mass audience, and it wasn't just shoved into the movie for the sake of checking off a diversity box. Looking at you, Endgame. Finally, I want to say that Birds of Prey has problems, but it's just so much fun that you don't even really mind the problems. They didn't ruin the entire experience for me, and I mean, that's what this movie was meant to be. It was just a fun, colorful, weird superhero movie. I'd say blockbuster, but I don't think those can be R-rated. I loved this movie, and I recommend it to anyone else looking for a good time. 7 out of 10.